Good afternoon, or is it still morning in California? Uh, it's quite an honor to be here this afternoon and to spend some time with you on a topic that is very important to me, very important to Kaiser Permanente, very important to this country, and very important to the world. I wanted to start out by showing you that video, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes and the context around it. But I want to dedicate this conversation that we're about to have to individuals around the country who are suffering from depression and anxiety and mental unrest. I want to dedicate it to families who are dealing with loved ones who can't remember their names. I want to dedicate it to individuals who one of my executives describes. He was giving a speech one time and he was talking about his mental challenges that he had to deal with. And he described it as wearing a helmet that you can't take off. That's the way he described it. So I want to dedicate what we're about to talk about to individuals walking on earth, whether that's in the United States or around the world. It's a topic that I talk about all over the world, who feel like they're wearing a helmet that they just can't take off. I want to share with you 3 facts, and then I want to do a quick survey in the room. And by the way, I'm supposed to tell you to go to Slido, SLIDO.com, and enter pound South by Southwest, SXSW. So please prepare for that. We're going to use this incredible tool for 2 things. I'm going to do a quick survey, and then later, this is how you can ask me questions. So 3 facts I want to plant in your mind as we talk about, so what's the real significance of this topic, and why are we talking about it? And some of it has to do with the tee up earlier about find your words. Here's the first one. Mental health illness affects 1 in 5 adults in the United States today. 1 in 5. The second, depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Depression. And the third one, suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death in the United States for young people between the ages of 15 and 24. And it is the leading cause for girls between 15 and 19. 3 facts. At this point, I want to do a quick survey. And please go to slido.com and enter pound SXSW. So can I do the first one now? Oh, I don't see it. That's all. Oh, okay, here you go. Do you know someone in your circle of family, friends, colleagues, or neighbors who are suffering from a mental health condition? So is there a face, a name, someone who comes to mind when I ask you that question? Wow, is that the answer that fast? Yeah. Whoa! You're serious about the technology. All right. 97% yes, 3% no. The second question, how mentally fit do you feel at this moment? Wow, that's great technology. At some events when I do the survey, it's a little punch card. It takes forever. It's like, yeah, please, come on, let's go. Okay. 49, almost 50%, my mental health could be better. 39%, almost 40%, I'm mentally fit. And 13%, my mental health is a little challenged. So just a quick survey of who's in the room and why this conversation is so important. Let me now give you a little bit of a short history about being on this journey and what I call the wake-up calls. Probably one of the most striking of the wake-up calls on my own journey as the chairman and CEO of the organization was a particular suicide. And it was a suicide that was very public, on the news quite a bit. The family was very disturbed about everything that happened before the suicide and after the suicide. The suicide was a young man who turned 17, and he reached out to Kaiser Permanente for help. And we have been seeing him as a patient in our mental health program. This young man later wanted to be seen again and decided the day before that appointment, and a lot of things happened, he committed suicide. We talked about this particular case at my board meeting. I talked about it in my management sessions. We really wanted to understand, how do we better understand someone who might want to take their lives? We kept that image in front of us. What's our role when someone potentially wants to do harm to themselves? That case stayed on our mind, and to this day, that case stays on our mind. Fast forward to today, we're actually doing deep research on suicides. In fact, we just gave a report to my board on this week. I'm literally flying in from my board meeting that ended yesterday afternoon, and I got in late last night. And one of the things that really has been striking about the study of suicide is that over 50% of the individuals who commit suicide actually shows no sign whatsoever, quote unquote, to loved ones, to family members in the health system before they commit suicide. The second wake-up call is beginning to understand the impact of all of this wonderful technology on our collective minds. The impact of being wired 24/7. The impact of waking up at 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning and the first thing that we reach for is the iPhone or the iPad. The impact of new research that's showing that the brain may not be getting as much rest to recuperate as it should be getting. And the impact of all of the impulses of the time in which we all live and how that's impacting our mind, our psyche, and our ability to think and to respond and to translate. The third wake-up call is around the gun violence and being right in the center as a healthcare organization that deals with the effects of guns. At Kaiser Permanente, in the years 2016 and 2017, we took care of over 11,000, almost 300 gunshot victims. Those are the one-offs that you see and read about in the paper, but they show up in our emergency departments. And we help the victims, and in most, if not all cases, the victim family. And while Kaiser Permanente has been clear, we have no interest in getting involved in the politics of should someone have a gun or not. We have every interest in talking about the effects and the consequences of our society in which we carry guns. And what do we do for community health's sake in grappling with this terrible situation? And then the final thing is what we call, and what you probably know of, as the fourth industrial revolution, that many of us around the globe and in many businesses are now talking about. The interconnectedness of technology, the massive improvements that we've made with digitalization, and the interconnection of things, the Internet of Things. As I think everyone knows, first industrial revolution, we figured out how to do farming and all those things. The second industrial revolution, we figured out how to do mass production and steam engines and those helpful, at that time, technologies. Third industrial revolution, we figured out how to do mass computing. And now the fourth industrial revolution is about digitalization and sensors. Sensors that impacts almost every industry. It's amazing what we're going to be able to do in healthcare because of sensors. Many of us are thinking about the hospital of the future being in your home, because all of the monitoring systems that we use in hospitals will become remotely available in homes. And the ability for you to be in your bed while you're getting care from competent professionals at Kaiser Permanente and other organizations used to be a pipe dream when I first started healthcare. Now it's a matter of time before we see the massive transformation that's going to go on as a result of it. So we came to the conclusion with all the facts that we have a health system in this country, and I would argue in this world, that doesn't match the challenges of mental health and mental well-being. That's the first fact about it. And if you look at the whole makeup of the healthcare industry in this country, it actually started as a result of people living longer. And people started living longer because we figured out how to deal with two things: sanitation and the production of foods. And once we figured that out, people started to live longer. And as people were living longer, they started to pick up illnesses. We built a healthcare system to, quote, fix them. And it centered around a hospital, mainly, and then we put other resources around that. And for whatever reason, we decided to detach the head from the body, as the metaphor I use, in the healthcare system. So when something went wrong with the brain, mental capacity, we built a whole separate healthcare system over there. Separate records, separate resources, separate ways of thinking about that. And then on top of that, the narrative that we created around mental health was all negative. Terms like they're crazy, they're stupid, they're cuckoo. I think we even had a movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was trying to think of the Alfred Hitchcock movie that some of you may know, where the sisters were together and one sister was kind of off and she served the other sister the bird and all that stuff. The imagery of mental health was always something that was laughable, that was said in jokingly ways, and yet families were dealing with it back then as we are now. but it was something you didn't talk about. You were ashamed of it. You didn't want to describe it. You didn't want to let people know in your family you were dealing with a mental health issue with your loved ones, your father, your mother, your sister, your brother. So as a result, the mental health stress wasn't just about the individual. It was also the family and the neighbors and the ones who knew the secret that something is wrong with Uncle so-and-so, or something is wrong with dad or mom or sisters. So at Kaiser Permanente, one of the things that we said was we're going to start a revolution around mental health and mental wellness and resilience. We're going to transform our organization and reconnect the head to the body. And we're going to be very public about it. We're going to stand up to the criticism, and we're also going to share the learnings. And we're going to engage thousands of people. People who are suffering from mental health illnesses, people who are interested in the topic, and people who practice the profession every single day. And that's what we're working on. The revolution around mental health and mental wellness. The last part, and then I'm going to open it up for questions and take comments. Mainly questions, I think, is where we engage. The last part is in the redesign of our medical systems for mental health. We have actually discovered that there are ways to reconnect the head to the body. And Kaiser Permanente is an organization that's already designed around what we call an integrative system of care. So it is not unusual if you came in to see a primary care physician, or if you video conference in to a primary care physician, and you said, I'm here because I'm suffering from knee pains. It's not uncommon for the physician to say, you know what, I'm going to ask my colleague down the hall, Dr. Jane Smith, to come in. She's an orthopedic specialist. I want her to look at your knee with me, and let's together determine what we should do about this. When the lights came on to us, why can't we have a psychiatrist or a medical social worker or someone else down the hall? And when we ask you, so how are you feeling mentally? How are you sleeping? How are you eating? How are the mental impulses? When you say, Doc, I can't sleep, I haven't slept well in 3 weeks. I'm not eating as much as I should be. Every day I'm thinking about the same problem over and over again. It's just hanging on to me like a helmet that I can't take off. We would say, well, I got Dr. Jane Smith down the hall. She specializes in what you're talking about. Can we invite her in? Let's figure out what we want to do about this. Total integration now of the head back to the rest of the body. Second thing that we're focused on is suicide prevention. And the innovation around technology now that gives us early warning signs and gives the individual early warning signs and a lifeline to reach out for help, a lifeline to show the signals. We're working on the difference between anxiety versus mass depression, how to cope, how to treat, how to integrate into everyday life. So the last thing that we're doing is what we call the destigmatizing mental health. The first commercial that I started with was our opening commitment to really working on the stigma around mental health. That first commercial, that some of you may have recognized the lyrics, are from the great rap artist, Kendrick Lamar, who also suffers from mental health, and who allowed us to use his words to launch what we call a Find Your Words campaign, which is our way of helping people just figure out how you want to reach out to tell somebody, I think I'm suffering from a mental situation. Now I want to show you our second commercial that we just started on the airways on, which is to help families and friends deal with this as well. Let it roll. Find your words. The final piece that I want to cover, and I have another commercial to show you. I love commercials. If it was left up to me, I would do all 60-second commercials, but they're so expensive. I'll take them at 30-second chunks. The final one is we've been also working on what we call resilience. Because mental fitness is all about, can you cope? I mean, none of us can get around the reality that we live in stressful times, that we have to cope with the realities of being citizens of the 21st century, that we all would admit we are so better off than our forefathers and our foremothers and others. So we have made tremendous progress as a country, as a nation, as a world. And so we're also working on what we call resilience. And how do you cope? How do we cope with everyday life? How do we turn it off? How do we survive in this information age in which data and information and everything is coming at us so fast? So we've been working on what we call a resilience approach. And we're starting to now design technology around it, a coaching approach. We have also partnered with the NBA and with sports personalities who do this every single day and whose reputation speak for themselves. We're very fortunate as an organization that we have a strategic partnership with the Warriors, the world champion Warriors, by the way. And so we have one of our Warriors stars who works directly with us at Kaiser Permanente, and he's been an incredible voice on our resilience campaign that we're working on in all of our Kaiser Permanente markets and around the country. Let's show that.
He is not one of the greats yet.
It's about titles.
2, 3.
Can Curry deliver?
You looked overwhelmed out there.
Too small. Struggling. Wrestlers denied.
Calm, strong, focused.